Justin, what's up, my brother?
My man, Saul. How you doing, my man? Happy
Good,
Sunday.
man. Hey, happy Sunday to you. Did you have an off day today?
Kind of, sort of.
Did you play some golf?
Kind of, sort of. Or at least went to the driving range to work on my game a little bit.
There you go. There you go. Hey,
I've been working on it.
I was living the dream here in the house, working a little bit this morning, and then the power went out. So naturally, when you get depressed, you start going to the liquor store. That's the first place you have to go. So that's what we did.
So it's 105 degrees outside in Phoenix. Your power goes out, and the first thing that you'd think to do is go to a liquor store.
Yeah, man. It's just I got to drown my sorrow somehow.
I'll tell you what though, Saul. I'm excited for today's Total BS podcast because normally on Sundays we have a guest. We didn't get a guest today, but it's going to be us two and, of course, our amazing listeners. And if you're also tuning in live, make sure you add some comments, join the conversation because we always appreciate the feedback and just the overall interaction. But today's podcast is going to be jam-packed. We're going to be talking some NBA. The NBA wanted Zion Williamson to do his thing in the bubble, but instead they got the Bubble Boys and the Red Hot Phoenix Suns. We'll talk about. You know it. I know Saul's got a big old grin on his face.
Already, jeez, come on, let's go.
I'm sorry, let's do it.
Your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just part of the program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You're not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us.
Yo, so first of all, we had a big time guest join us earlier this week with Mike Yam from the Pac-12 Network. If you didn't get a chance to check out that podcast, please go to our podcast platforms and download that podcast. It's definitely worth the listen. We're going to play a few clips from that today. But man, I'm telling you what, he dropped a lot of cool things, some good insight, some knowledge. And like I said, there it is on all the platforms for you guys to see. And you guys can just click, download that podcast, save it for later while you're watching this show, and come back. And also, by the way, you see this, right? Them Coyotes, baby, repping into the first round of the playoffs. And we already got somebody making a comment on the hat. There you go, Will Coburn. Appreciate the love. Here we go.
It's also a good time to be a Phoenix sports fan.
Oh, I can't remember the last time I said that. I will say this. It's been a long time. So a lot of energy, a lot of optimism around here, and God knows we could use it. We mentioned this last week. We said we had a couple guests lined up for the week. Mike Yam was one of those guests. This week, we have a super huge podcast. I feel like Justin's about to go ahead. Go ahead. Do it to him, Justin. I know you got it ready.
What? What's that?
Go ahead. Hit it. Miss Sarah Spain from ESPN is going to join us on the podcast this week. And so it will not be a live stream because she obviously, Sarah is a very busy woman. She's a writer. She's a sports host. She does her show. They're coming back with Spain and Fitz.
Oh, nice.
17th is something that ended about a year ago, and she was doing Spain and Company for a little while, but now Spain and Fitz is back in the house starting the 17th, and so she's going to come on. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. She's a Chicago girl. We might talk a little Last Dance and her thoughts on that. We're going to talk a little college football, which we're about to get into. It's just, I'm telling you right now is a great time to take a listen to this podcast and really come aboard because we got some great things coming up.
We have amazing guests, and that's one thing that we're really trying to emphasize because, we're trying to draw people in. And one thing that draws our listeners is when we get these interesting guests. And, Sarah Spain is as good as it gets. We're talking about a pro's pro. She does a little bit of everything at ESPN, and her analysis and everything that she does is just incredible. And then in Mike Yam's thoughts on the state of college football for 2020 is very interesting, Saul. And I got to say, I was actually surprised because this is a guy from Pac-12 Networks. At Pac-12 Networks, a part of it, obviously, covering the Pac-12, all 12 schools, but to add some positivity and some promotion for the conference, from Mike Yam to be real about the state of college football and where sports are at heading into the fall, it is very eye-opening, and I highly recommend everyone to go check out the episode. It's posted on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go check it out, but obviously do it after you listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. And you know what, Justin, we might as well start off right there. College football is on the ropes. It seems a lot of the university presidents and athletic directors will be meeting this week to talk about that very particular subject. And oh my goodness, I think on the surface, it all started with the MAC and the MAC dropping out, saying they were going to postpone everything until the spring. And right away, you can feel everybody's, sphincter kind of tighten up. Like, is this the first marble? Is this the first marble to go, or the first domino to drop? And I think it is. And I think people are starting to come to that realization. But there's a lot more layers to it than just that, right, Justin?
There's a lot of layers to this, and the MAC is a non-Power 5 conference, so there were a lot of people who thought, like you and me saw, we're like, oh no, is this the first domino? But then there were other people that understood, well, the MAC doesn't have as much money as the SEC or the ACC or the Big Ten or the Pac-12. So I think if you're looking at dollars and cents here, maybe it makes sense because they can't afford to do uniform testing. And when I say dollars and cents, I'm sure people are like, what? Schools need football in order to fund their athletic programs, but not so fast. Maybe a lot of these schools are going in the same route as the Pac-12. We talked with Mike Yam about the loan program that the Pac-12 could go through if they were to not play football this season and also fall sports, which could be $83 million for each school around the conference to cover their loss. And that's the max. And it doesn't also include private schools like USC and Stanford. So when you see the number of $996 million, close to $1 billion, people think, oh my goodness, that is a lot of money. How could any conference recover from that? But it's at a 3.75% rate over the course of 10 years. And plus, there's so much money that goes into media rights that these conferences could cancel the fall sports season and then adopt this loan program. But listen, the Power 5 commissioners, they're all going to meet together over the next few days, and we could figure out what's going to happen with college football this year.
Yeah.
And it's I don't think it looks good. I really don't.
It doesn't. And leadership is something we'll get to in a minute. But first, I think the more important thing I think on the player's mind is their safety, their overall well-being, in addition to being compensated fairly. By the way, shout out to Scooby Dooby Q out there in Kansas City for the shout out. I saw that across the bottom. But I think that's the most important thing, is that these players want their value. And if they're going to put themselves at risk, that value has to be equal to the danger that they're putting themselves in front of, right? And Mike Yam kind of talked about that when we talked to him this past week.
I've been on record months and years ago. Like, these dudes should be able to make cash off of their name, image, and likeness. What's fair is fair. And I appreciate the scholarship argument, and I totally agree with it, and this whole idea of being an amateur. But if I'm a talented musician on a particular campus and so-and-so, you guys on your show say, hey, we're going to go and pay you to write our theme music for our show. Like, okay, cool. Like, I got that talent and that ability to go and do so. Why shouldn't I be able to capitalize it? And I'd say the same thing for the athlete. And maybe that musician is on full scholarship. I just, to me, they should get that. And I'm glad NIL is going in their favor.
I mean, the player movement is a very real thing right now.
It is.
And I think it's gotten so much momentum. And on different levels, Mike obviously pointed out earlier this week that when the Pac-12 came out with their statement and their requirements, if you will, the Big Ten followed suit later on, and it was a kind of a different set of demands, especially when it comes to revenue. I think the Big Ten players were more focused on safety, playing, and moving forward that way, whereas the Pac-12 players were wanting some major revenue in return. A 50% revenue split, I don't care what industry you are, employees just about in every industry are never going to get a 50% revenue split. So the lack of, the lack of advice that these players might have gotten kind of undermined what it was that they tried to do, right? But at the core of it, what we're talking about is trying to make sure that you get an opportunity to profit off of yourself. That's what the core of this is, right? And then after that, we're also talking about safety. We're also talking about, possible scholarship lengthening and getting your just due for putting yourself at risk. And I think because of this COVID situation, it has made it a lot more obvious what these players want and what they should be doing as they move forward. It's a very, very tricky and very slippery slope for both angles.
Yeah. 50% revenue, even in a normal world, is still a huge reach. And I applaud them for standing up and creating this union, because now is an important time to be a student athlete. Now is an important time just to be an athlete in general, with the way the world is outside of just COVID. And that's why I applaud the Pac-12 Players Union, if that's what you want to call it, the We Are United movement, for emphasizing, focusing on racial injustice and getting justice, for all. And it's very commendable. And again, I will continue to applaud them. But the fact is that the Pac-12 is kind of the odd man out in this whole thing, because other conferences and other players around the country, they want uniform testing because they want to be able to play football. If schools, if like, for instance, in the Big Ten, if one school isn't testing as much as another school,
it's a wrap.
To me, that just spells chaos for the future, because then there could be an outbreak during this condensed season. And then the NCAA and college football is going to get to a point where it's like, okay, now what? What are we going to do with this team that we got to face this week that has over half its players test positive for COVID-19?
Look at Major League Baseball as a perfect example of that. Individual teams maybe not taking every single necessary precaution available. And now you're seeing teams here and there with players testing positive because maybe they're not taking it as seriously or as strict as they should be. Now, times that by 10, 15 per team? You know what I mean? Like, that's a huge amount of variable when it comes to individual people and putting them on campus. And if you can't trust the University of Arizona because they're not doing it the same way that ASU is doing it, and they're not doing it the same way Utah's doing it, or Colorado State or Syracuse or North Carolina, like, where are we going? You know what I mean? Like, it's just never going to work. So I understand why the players are doing that and why they want it to be completely uniform, and they want it to be stringent because they want to know that once they step on that football field, their safety was paramount to anything else.
Exactly. And the Pac-12 players, they were kind of the first ones to set the tone and get everyone behind them. But then they met with their leader, right? They want to figure out, okay, that's a pretty loose term, I think. Does our leader support what we are doing? And lavish Larry Scott, the Pac-12 commissioner, lavish Larry.
I call him Leisure Larry because I just envision if he was in the 70s, he'd have one of those butterfly, suits with the open and the lace, the pattern, because you got to coordinate. You got to coordinate.
This man, how much did he spend a night on a room in Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament?
Was it 12,000?
Something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it was
that penthouse because I'm sure that party is lit.
Larry Scott doesn't party. This man, he's probably that guy that just spends all this money thinking he's going to be the main attraction. In reality, he's in his room all by himself. But going back to Larry, the players actually virtually met with Larry Scott to see if their leader, their commissioner, can get behind them on this. And then Larry Scott comes out and says that this We Are United movement is a Pac-12, is a PR stunt by the Pac-12 players, and they really weren't as informed as maybe they should have been. Maybe they weren't informed with requesting the 50% revenue, but if I'm a player in the Pac-12 and I see my commissioner say that we are doing all of this to profit,
PR stunt. Yeah.
and to focus on racial injustice. And you think this is all a PR stunt? Larry Scott, to me, was never about the student athletes to begin with. He was all about the money and generating money for the conference. And I get it, that's a part of your job, but you also have to be all about the student athletes, and you have to put these guys first, because guess what? At the end of the day, these guys are making you your money so you can afford to spend $10,000 a night in Las Vegas.
Well, it's funny that you bring up leadership and you bring up Larry Scott, because that's kind of part two of this problem, right? Like I said, there's many layers, not just two of them, but the lack of leadership all the way across college football. There's not one specific person that you have to go to make sure that everybody else falls in line. And I think that's part of the problem. And Mike Yam touched on that as well.
Lack of leadership at the top. Who's making the call on this stuff? Like, legitimately, who is? Power 5 football it's autonomous. Like, they don't have to listen to the NCAA, essentially. Like, they can just kind of do whatever they want. When all this stuff was happening, we were talking about schedules. I can tell you all the P5 commissioners are on a somewhat daily call. When the Big Ten, Kevin Warren comes out and says, hey, conference only schedule. And a day or two later, Bob Bowlesby's like, no, like, we're not even considering that right now. I'm thinking, ooh, like, we're not all on the same page here. A couple days later, Pac-12 follows the Big Ten. They say conference only. Still the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, not ready to announce anything. To me, that says there's not this uniformity at that level.
I mean, he hit it on the head. That's exactly what the problem is. And it starts, honestly, I think people have this misconception that Mark Emmert, at the head of the NCAA pretty much, can really push the buttons and pull the strings. That's not exactly the case. Each individual conference has its own power within its own conference to essentially nullify the season, right? So if the SEC or the Pac-12 or the Big Ten come out and say, we're not playing sports this year until the spring, guess what? You can't have a college football season, because you're not going to have a college football playoff without one of those major, conference, leaders. So what do? It's just, it's so crazy. It's so difficult. And to Yam's point, there's a lot more people pulling the strings than just one person. And that's the problem.
Now, I will say this, with the Pac-12 players threatening to opt out of the season if these expectations aren't met by the conference, there's also other players who are starting this social media hashtag saying hashtag we want to play. And it's not just the Pac-12, it's in the Big Ten, it's all across the board. So a lot of these college football players, they want to play the upcoming season in the fall. I
mean, Trevor Lawrence, for example, he says he wants to play. Yeah, but guess what? The reason why he wants to play too, let's again, everybody has an agenda, right? Everybody has a motive. Now, whether that motive is pure or not is debatable depending on who you're talking to. But Trevor Lawrence is probably going to be a surefire #1 pick next year in the draft. He doesn't want to wait till spring to play and possibly risk injury that close to the draft. There's no way that if they push it to spring, Trevor Lawrence is he's never going to play for Clemson again, period. Yeah. So, of course he wants to play. What about, little Johnny Hill, third string tailback for the University of Wyoming? Like, does it matter what he says? You know what I'm saying? So, like, I understand the idea of wanting to play this year because there's a lot of money on the line, and a lot of money on the line for more than just the universities. At the same time, what do? There's no best option.
I just searched Johnny Hill on Google, and he actually recently played at Drake University as a football player. I just put in Johnny Hill football, and the last thing I got was Johnny Hill playing at Drake as a running back in 2018.
There you go. I could have said David Johnson, but yeah.
Yeah, nah. But, from what I've gathered over the last couple days, I mean, it all started on Saturday with the MAC saying that, they're canceling fall sports and they're just going to move forward. From the people that I have watched on Twitter and have spoken to, I'm thinking we're going to get a decision probably Monday or Tuesday on the college football season. Nicole Auerbach just tweeted literally as we're recording this podcast on Sunday night, the Big Ten met, and they still have yet to make a decision. So they're going to carefully deliberate, and eventually they're going to make a decision. Will that be the right decision? I don't know, but obviously there's a reason why I'm on this podcast and not making those decisions.
I mean, again, we're talking about money. Money, what did Wu-Tang sing? Cash rules everything around me. That's it. I mean, it's true. That's it. It is the motivating factor. Now, are these conferences really at the best interest of these players and pushing everything to the spring because they're worried about the safety precautions? Or are they just trying to buy themselves more time in order to get fans back into the stadium to make more money? Which one is it? You know what I'm saying? And so that's the difficult. You can't accuse a conference of doing that if you don't really know, but that is a very real possibility that is a motivation for some of these commissioners, because a lot of them rely so heavily on football to really provide money for the rest of the athletic department. And so it's a confusing and it's very complex situation on multiple fronts, not only money, not only likeness, not only COVID, not only social justice. It's just everything all in one bubble. And unfortunately, that bubble's about to pop, and it seems like it's going to pop this week. Now, speaking of the bubble, see how I did that? Yeah. So the bubble down in Orlando, the NBA, another week. It's been fantastic to watch. And I got to say something, Justin. I know your Lakers have been kind of up and down. They beat the Lakers and they lose a couple games. But who hasn't lost yet in the bubble is the Phoenix Suns. And man, has it been fun to watch, especially Devin Booker. I mean, averaging over 30 points a game. He's been awesome. Hits a shot around Kawhi over Paul George to win it against the Clippers. I mean, he's been everything you hoped he would be and more. And you're really starting to see this Suns team come about. But.
What's the but?
But, as a Phoenix Suns fan and an Arizona sports fan, it's like either the universe or just individuals that are rotten to their core just can't let us enjoy this one little nugget of purity. They got to poop all over our salad just because. You know what I mean? And that individual this week was one Mr. Draymond Green.
Of course it is.
It's great to see Book playing well and Phoenix playing well, but get my man out of Phoenix. It's not good for him. It's not good for his career. Sorry, Chuck, but they got to get Book out of Phoenix. I need my man to go somewhere where he can play great basketball all the time and win, because he's that type of player.
Are you tampering?
Maybe.
$50,000 out of your pocket, and you deserved every single cent of it, Draymond Green. I'm talking to you. Keep your nose out of Phoenix's business. Hey, I'm telling you what, Devin Booker, for what he's worth, since I've ever known him, ever seen him play, ever heard him speak about the Phoenix Suns, he has always been dedicated to the franchise. He wants to make Phoenix a destination more than he wants to leave it. Definitely. Okay. And a guy like Draymond Green, who continuously tries to recruit, it's like, dude, I'm not even trying to hear you. Somebody said, I'm not trying to hear somebody who averages a single, triple, a triple single. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. And I'm not trying to hear that. Draymond's a great defensive player, and he's a great talker. That's where it all ends right there. That's it. Yeah. Okay. So you can miss me with that mess.
My favorite Draymond Green moment was when Paul Pierce was playing for the Clippers, and Paul Pierce was just sitting on the sideline, just yelling at Blake Griffin, "Come on, BG, he's too little, he's too little." And then Draymond Green said, "Well, okay, you're in your last year. We'll keep chasing that farewell tour because, guess what? They don't love you like that. Would you think you were Kobe?" Great trash talker, unbelievable trash talker, ultra competitor, but he's one of the most annoying guys in the NBA. I don't think he's as annoying as Pat Beverly, even though Pat Beverly, I do get a laugh out of him every single time.
I love me some Pat Bev.
He's gritty. He's a gritty guy. But my goodness, Draymond Green talks like the guy who really didn't contribute to the group project. All he really did was do a little bit. He supervised and he got an A+. I'm sorry that you were paired with probably the greatest backcourt of all time, or at least the greatest shooting backcourt of all time. I'm sorry you had Kevin Durant, one of the top small forwards the game has ever seen, come and be your teammate. Draymond Green contributed to those championship teams with his defense. I'll give you that. But who was guarding LeBron James in all those NBA Finals appearances?
Andre Iguodala.
It was definitely Andre Iguodala. And what about against the Toronto Raptors? Just saying, you are supposed to be this great defensive player, and yet you couldn't even guard the other team's best player. Instead, they had a guy who's a little bit older than you and isn't considered a top player.
Siakam tore him up.
Exactly. And when those two players, like I just mentioned, and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, when they go down with injury and they're gone for most of the year, Kevin Durant's in Brooklyn. What happened with the Golden State Warriors? When you were asked to carry the team, you're over here debating whether you're going to pick LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards in the NBA draft. That right there just irritates me about Draymond Green.
Teddy Gilman.
Pat Bev, the Piranha. But the thing that bothers me the most, Saul, is $50,000 is nothing with this fine, because Ernie Johnson straight up asked him, "Are you tampering right now?" And he was like, maybe. Meanwhile, Magic Johnson, when he was the president of basketball operations with the Lakers, all he did was compliment Giannis Antetokounmpo publicly. Never once said that, "Oh, we got to get Giannis out of Milwaukee and maybe have him come to LA." I don't know.
There's a big difference, Justin.
He was fined $500,000.
There's a big difference, though. There's a big difference. Who can make moves actually happen? An executive or a player? Oops.
True. But don't give me that.
That's the reason why. You're just salty because it was a Laker that got busted. That's all it is.
But all Magic Johnson did was just compliment Giannis Antetokounmpo. And next thing you know, he's getting fined $500,000.
Hey, I'm telling all the Suns right now, if you're watching this stream, if you get word of this stream, hey, shout out every single player you possibly can, because this is the shine you're going to get right now for the next week. Like, all the limelight is on you. Dude, the Suns might make the playoffs.
They might.
And people forget that the 8-9 matchup is still a possibility, because all they have to be is within 4 games of the number 8 seed. Then they get the play-in game. And that play-in game is they would have to win 2, and then whoever's the 8 seed would have to win 1. But still, there's your chance. There's your chance to get in the playoffs. And then guess who they would play in the first round, Justin?
My Los Angeles
Lakers.
Yes, sir. But going back to your point about Devin Booker, the Phoenix Suns recognized that he was going to be an all-star caliber player, a franchise player, the face of the team. And so that's why a couple years ago they threw him that crazy contract so they can lock him in.
$3 million for 5 years. The first year started this year.
You have DeAndre Ayton paired with him. That chemistry seems to be great. Monty Williams should be the coach of the LA Lakers right now, but he's now with the Phoenix Suns, and he is such a great coach. So I'm excited for the Suns' future. I really am, because Devin Booker is a great player. But we've always been talking about, well, can he really win in Phoenix? He's out here scoring 30 points a game and having these ridiculous performances, but they're still losing. The Phoenix Suns are red hot right now, and I never thought that I'd be saying that they are fighting for a playoff spot. And if they were to play the Los Angeles Lakers, I think we're going to have to put a little total BS wager on that series.
You're just one injury away from getting eliminated in the first round, Justin. Just one injury.
Alex Caruso?
Yeah, that's it, baby. You know what? Honestly, if I had to pick one player that I hate the most on the Lakers, it's not LeBron, it's not AD. It is hands down Alex Caruso, because you guys love him so much, and it just annoys the hell out of me. That's the only reason.
Because he's got an atrocious hairline, and he is such a great story. Like, he was undrafted, played in the G League, but all of a sudden he's emerged as this incredible role player, and a guy who's got sneaky bounce. They don't call him Paul for no reason, Saul.
Okay. Also, somebody else that kind of gets under my nerves is Mr. TJ Warren. Scoring Warren, is that what you called him? Scoring Warren?
Yeah, no, TJ scoring.
Yeah, TJ scoring. Yeah. Well, he's been on fire in the bubble.
Yes, his Pacers teammate TJ McConnell. I stole it from him, by the way,
Okay.
because TJ McConnell was mic'd up and he said, "TJ scoring." I came up with that on the spot. Like, of course, it's TJ McConnell.
Tony Buckets is what they call them around here. But TJ Warren's been on fire until he met the Phoenix Suns, and Mikal Bridges locked that ass up. And, hey, if you face your old team, and I will say this, earlier in the season, TJ Warren battled the Suns, and there was a little trash talk in that game. They matched up again. TJ could live up to the hype. I'm just saying, Mikal Bridges also, by the way,
Really good player.
Way he very much reminds me of like a Scottie Pippen type of hybrid player. Long, lengthy arms, can play multiple positions. Love it. But anyway, TJ Warren, I just want to say this idea that TJ Warren was wronged and people are saying, oh, cash considerations and blah, blah, blah. First of all, TJ Warren did not fit in with this team. I don't care what anybody says. Scoring wise, he pretty much was just about himself. When the ball, it was like he was like the black hole. When the ball would go to him, it would just disappear. That's it. Like, it just happened. And so TJ Warren being, acclaimed this, this awesome scorer, and I can't believe the Suns traded him. Miss me with that mess, man, because if the Suns don't trade him, they just wanted to free up some cap room. That's all they wanted to do. They didn't care about anything else. And they did so and got Ricky Rubio, which they desperately needed a point guard, and he's made a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And they were able to re-sign Kelly Oubre, who schematically and for their scheme was a much better fit than TJ Warren.
Absolutely. And people are saying, well, TJ Warren was putting up numbers as a Phoenix Sun, and it's kind of going back to my whole point about Devin Booker. Yeah, it's all great that you're putting up 20, 25 points in a game, but you're also losing, and you're doing it against just absolutely terrible teams. TJ Warren is on a hot streak right now.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Let's look at his game log ever since entering the bubble. Against Philadelphia, 53 points. Against the Wizards, 34 points. Against the Magic, 32 points. Against Saul's Phoenix Suns, 16 points. Ooh. And against my Los Angeles Lakers, 39 points. So the only team that he didn't give a 30-piece to were the Phoenix Suns. But what's so
locked up, don't let me out.
No. I will say this. The most impressive part about TJ Warren and his incredible bubble streak is that he's shooting at the ball 61%.
I mean, he's playing phenomenal.
He's playing pretty good, but listen, it's just a streak. And I applaud TJ Warren because I think he's going to get a little bit of a bonus, or at least the next contract that he signs, he might earn a little bit more money, because then he could say, well, look what I did against all these incredible teams in the NBA bubble. But it's just a streak. It's over the course of 8 games. A lot of people forget so many average players had incredible streaks, and people were talking about, oh, let's pay this guy.
Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin.
Exactly, Linsanity. New York Knicks fans were ready to give this man like a Carmelo Anthony, Amari Stoudemire.
Put the statue outside the garden. That's what it was, baby.
Exactly.
Linsanity was the real thing.
And it didn't really turn out to be anything. I love TJ Warren. I love it. But I'm telling you what, it's just a streak. Let's see how he finishes off the bubble season. Then we can say if TJ Warren's a really good player. And I also need to see next year as well. I don't need to see just 8 games. Then all of a sudden, cash considerations was the one that got away from the Phoenix Suns.
That's what he should have put on the back of his jersey. Cash considerations. that would have been pretty funny.
Oh, man.
Also, talk about overhyped. And I understand Luka Doncic is a great player. I do not.
What are you about to say?
I do not dispute that, not one bit. But come on. I understand he made a between the legs pass against Milwaukee. I get that. Do we realize James Harden does that like every other game? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where the hype can miss me. Like, I just don't understand. people that don't really pay attention or don't watch every single game, and they're like, and they see something for the first time, and they make it seem like it's the first time in the history of the game that's ever happened. No, son, it isn't. Luka didn't invent basketball. I don't care what you Dallas Mavericks fans out there think. James Harden has done that between the legs pass a million times. There's actually clips on Twitter that point out that fact. And so, like, I'm over the Luka hype train. Future MVP. You know what? Honestly, I would be surprised if Luka didn't win an MVP at some point. He is that good. But again, if he hits a 3-pointer, it's not the first 3-pointer in the history of the game. Okay, let's just take it from here and bring it down to here. Okay, let's just chill.
Did you just do a Ross Geller?
Yes, I did. yeah. We mix it all over the place here, baby. Go ahead.
I'll say, well, Luka. I think the reason why so many people were hyping up that between the legs play was, one, Giannis Antetokounmpo was guarding him, a guy who's probably going to win MVP this year.
And defensive player of the year.
And defensive player of the year. And it was at a critical point in the game. It was in the last minute. It was pretty much the play that sealed the deal for the Dallas Mavericks. But I agree with you, Saul. I mean, these are plays that we see from a lot of players. And just because he was this European player that nobody really thought would be this great, everybody is just completely all over him. But
yeah, I totally get it. I understand the hype, but let's just not make every basketball play seem like it's greater than it actually was. It was a great basketball play. That's it. Yeah. Like, we can appreciate just a great basketball play for being just a great basketball play. It doesn't need to be like anointed top 5 of all time in something, like just chill. And then last but not least, the 8th spot in the West, kind of crazy. You got the Blazers, you got the Suns, you got the Spurs, you got the Grizz. Those are the 4 teams that are left, because you said that the Pelicans are eliminated and the Kings eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, and like you said, Adam Silver tried to give this one to the Pelicans, and they were like, "Get that mess out of here.
Mm-hmm.
We ain't trying to go back to the bubble. We're trying to go back home to New Orleans."
Adam Silver wanted that first round playoff matchup to be
Zion
Pelicans, Zion versus LeBron.
Zion hasn't looked like himself, though. He hasn't looked like himself in this entire time. He's looked not slow, but he just doesn't look right.
Yeah. Well, and I also think too, maybe he's on a little bit of a short leash, because he was pretty pissed off about his minute restrictions. Like, there was a game earlier in the bubble in which they lost, and Alvin Gentry took him out because he was on that minutes restriction because of his injury. And Zion Williamson was very upset about that. And so maybe he kind of checked out of the bubble, where it's like, okay, look, we are fighting for a playoff spot. Every game in this 8-game regular season matters. If you're not going to play me, the number 1 pick, the guy who's supposed to be the face of your franchise, in crunch time, then what the hell am I even doing here? So maybe this is Zion Williamson just completely checking out and being done with the bubble. But the NBA really wanted that Zion versus LeBron, and they're going to end up with AD versus DeAndre Ayton.
Hey, there we go. I like how you did that. Hey, I wouldn't be mad at that at all. It's either that. I mean, outside of the Spurs, pretty much every matchup. Honestly, if the Suns can't make it, you know who I want to see in the first round against the Lakers, right?
Portland.
Oh yeah, Dame Dollar, baby.
Portland.
Oh man, hey, and that should scare you, because Portland is a very legit team as an 8 seed. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
Well, and the only reason why they're even in this position to begin with is because they were battling injuries all year long.
And now they're healthy.
Yusuf Nurkic was out all year long. He's a 7-footer that can do a little bit of everything for them, and he's so versatile. And they had other guys that were dealing with injury. Carmelo Anthony was still trying to kind of find his legs coming back of the NBA. Ever since he's been in the bubble, he's looked solid. In one of the games, I'm blanking on who they were playing, but he hit a crunch time 3-pointer to pretty much lift them to win the game. They have so many unique pieces. Saul, I'm scared. Me being a Lakers fan, I would be the first one to tell you I am scared for all those reasons that I just said. They're healthy. And who's going to guard Damian Lillard?
No. Well, first of all, nobody can guard Damian Lillard, just like nobody can guard LeBron James. Dame can cross half court by 1 foot and just launch and hit. You know what I mean? So like he's got such a skill set for such a versatile guard, and at his size, which is just remarkable. But it's going to be interesting to see how this 8 seed plays out. Unfortunately, I really wish that the Blazers could have played the Clippers in the first round, but that ain't going to happen because Pat Bev and Dame Lillard, a little beef along with Paul George. By the way, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I was hoping we would.
Dame Lillard has every reason to tell those two to shut the hell up, especially Paul George, because dude dropped the series-winning bucket on his head last year. Like, what are you talking about, Paul George? Some people can't take it. Dude, you can't take it.
Yeah.
People that can't take it have to talk. Paul George and Pat Bev were talking. That's all I'm saying.
But Pat Bev was funny because he was just on the sideline,
Acting
just
a fool.
chirping.
Yeah.
And then when Damian Lillard choked on the free throw line, and he did choke. He did. And that's usually not what we've seen out of Damian Lillard. Usually in those moments, he comes up big time. But he choked on the free throw line, and then they pan the camera over to Patrick Beverley, and he's constantly pointing at his wrist, mocking the Dame time slogan. And then you have, Paul George saying, some people can play and talk trash, some can't. And then Damian Lillard clapped back on Instagram and said, dude, you switch so many teams.
Oh, yeah.
You're what do you say? You boys is chumps.
Yeah.
He called them all chumps and said, listen, you're always switching teams. You've never had success. And this is the same Paul George who's been the victim of game winner after game winner after game winner. He's a victim of a game-winning shot in the NBA bubble against your Phoenix Suns, Saul. Devin Booker's game winner against the Clippers. Who was it over? Paul George, who, by the way, slapped his hand and should have been called a foul, but it didn't. And the greatest thing Paul George has ever done as an NBA player is take the LeBron-led Miami Heatles to 7 games. And you know what he did in that game 7? He dropped 9 points and was kind of like MIA. Yep. That's what Paul George has done in the NBA. Damian Lillard, incredible player. He's done so much for that franchise. I'm with Dame. I'm not really such a big fan of Paul George with how he's handled things over the last couple of years. But listen, no team wants to see the Portland Trail Blazers in the playoffs. Not the Clippers, not the Lakers. So I'll leave it at that.
In short, when we talk about Paul George, we're basically saying don't be that guy. Just don't be that guy. It's just
damn
that
you,
simple.
Paul George.
Damn you, Paul George. So I'm gonna lead it off this week. I have a young lady who was just having a good time in the back of a truck, and they went into a parking garage. And I'm gonna just say, keep your head up because you never know what's coming your way.
It's okay.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Amanda.
You okay?
No, I'm not. I know you're not okay.
Yeah, she hit that pole so damn hard. So for those of you who are listening on the podcast tomorrow, what it was is this young lady was in the back of a truck and she was sitting on the, kind of the arm of the truck, if you will, the higher part of the bed of the truck. And they went into a parking garage, and those beams that tell you like nothing over 6'6" can come into
clearance.
The clearance beam. Yeah, she smacked her head against one of those things. Didn't see it coming. You know what?
It's okay.
That noise, I can listen to that noise a
It's
billion.
okay.
One more
It's
time.
okay.
And then her friend, like holding in the laugh, but also feeling so bad for her friend.
Yeah.
And then they pan the camera back over to her, and she looked like she was just going through it. Like,
She was like,
oh,
I think I split my head open. Should we do it one more time?
yes.
It's okay.
The noise will never not be funny.
Oh my gosh, we should put that on a loop and make a sound out of that, man. So we call her Amanda Bang. Oh man. So yeah, not a good start for that young lady that night, but hopefully she's okay and she recovered.
One more time.
Oh, I just deleted it. I'm sorry,
dang
buddy.
it. Oh,
Dang
man.
it. Anyway, don't be that guy.
So everyone has that significant other that they want to spend the rest of their life with. Well, this couple decided, or I wouldn't say she decided, this guy decided, I'm going to propose to my significant other on the nose of a boat out in the middle of the ocean. And when he asked his boy, family member, best friend, I don't know who it is, but when he asked for the engagement ring, guess what happened? It went a little. Are you stupid?
What? Are you kidding me?
Just epic failure.
Are you stupid? That's my favorite part of the video because it sounds like the rapper 6ix9ine. I don't like him. I don't like 6ix9ine, but doesn't it kind of sound like 6ix9ine in the background?
I have never listened to Tekashi Trash 9 ever, man. Don't ever ask me that question again.
I don't blame you.
Because I don't listen to snitches. I don't like that dude.
I don't blame you. But
plus, he looks nasty as hell, man.
I know. He looks a little grimy. But play the clip again. I just gotta see it. Are you stupid?
What? Are you kidding me?
You know, the guy who proposed was very relieved because you can hear him at the end saying, "It's floating. It's right there." Because I know for about 4 seconds, that guy really thought that ring sank all the way to the bottom of the ocean.
There's a bigger clip out there on TikTok, a little bit longer, and they do get the ring back. So big sigh of relief there, because that's what I was worried about. I was like, oh man, how much money is going down to the bottom of the ocean right now? This is terrible, man. It's like you were just like, I don't know, in the back. I re-uploaded it for you, buddy. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Don't
yeah,
be that guy.
And I'll tell you what, the guy that jumped in the water, that's your new best man right there. It's not the dude that was holding on to that ring and tossed it in the ocean like it was nothing. It's the dude that jumped in the water to go get that ring for you and your fiance, man. That's a real best man right there.
If there was a visible animal around the boat, like you saw a fin, would you jump in and get that ring?
Hell no. Hell no. You?
No.
Yeah, no. They'd be like, hell no. No, hell to the no. No, not happening. I'm like, oh man, that's terrible, man. Or I'd make the dude that threw the ring in there go get it. Just toss him. Well, you better sink or swim.
See that?
Yeah,
that's your mistake right there. You fix that.
There you go.
Get it.
All right. Hey, just like every single week, we like to end on something positive, something that kind of makes your heart warm up. And so this week we have a father and daughter who are going to be practicing some cheers, and it's just, I'll let you take a look.
1, 2. Are you okay? Did that hurt? But hey, you see how you never straddled? You didn't go for a straddle right there, okay? Okay. And that was kind of dangerous. So make sure you go for the right skill, okay? Okay. Because if I say full up and then straddle, and you do a full up and you don't straddle, you're gonna fall. But Daddy will always save you. I won't let you hit the ground like that, okay? Okay. But make sure you follow instructions, okay? Give me my big kiss. Are you ready to get it? You okay? Wipe those tears off. I got you.
Hi, Instagram. New start.
Let's get it. Big smile. Double up. 1, 2. Good. Drop full up to a straddle. Kick out now. Good. Hand ski. 1, 2. Lock out. Good. 1, 2. Good. Stretch. Lock out your leg. Prep. Double down. Go. Toes. Woo! Clean.
Clean.
Wow.
I mean, that's just, I have a daughter and I love, obviously the whole Kobe accident, right? And the girl dad thing that kind of came out of that. It like took it to another level, I think, for a lot of dads out there, and how much they can mean to their daughters and how much of an example they can be for them. And to see this young man and his daughter, she had a little turbulence. She kind of, she struggled for a second. She kind of lost her focus, and he was able to comfort her and rebuild her, build her back up to the queen that she is. Boom. Beautiful moment.
And just that whole routine, like how clean it was. I wasn't expecting that. Like after the first mistake, thought, okay, well, maybe they're just working on small things and eventually will lead to what we saw was the final product. And then he just said, no, you should have straddled. You didn't go for this.
Yeah.
Built up her confidence. And then they went and did the whole routine. And I'm like,
I mean, what was your thought when she went into that first handstand and he's like holding her up like this and she's like, I was what? And then he flipped her onto her feet and I was like, oh my gosh, this is way more intense than I thought it was going to be. That's for sure.
I wonder how many times they have practiced that, because she's a very young girl and they seem like they have perfected that. I don't know, man. That's just awesome right there.
For sure.
And
I don't know if it's a theme, but you also have a father-daughter combo.
This wasn't planned, honestly. I saw this picture that came across the Twitter timeline earlier today, and somebody had the caption, "Fellas, are you doing this with your daughter?" And so many people were like, hell yes, I'm doing this with my daughter. For our listeners who are listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and can't see this image, it is just a photo of a dad and a daughter, and both of them are wearing tutus. So, he's trying to be this father figure that's just always around in his daughter's life and is willing to do everything that she's trying to do. And if that means put on a tutu, then so be it. And there are so many toxic, masculine, macho guys out there that are just that they have too much pride that they wouldn't even do something close like that. And I think that's where maybe sometimes, a daughter and father's relationship can have a gap. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but you have to be willing to just apply yourself to what your daughter is doing, and to see guys that are just willing to just have fun and be a part of the process. That is a great father right there. The two guys that we just saw are fantastic. I
think one of the things about being a dad, and Justin, I hope you get to experience this one day, as I sure ladies, he came on, he's available now. But I think one of the things that I appreciate is I used to think in a very old school kind of way when it came to raising kids, right? And I started off with two boys right off the bat, and so boys are boys. You're rough with them, you're tough with them, and they bounce back and all this other stuff, right? And I thought I would have to take a different approach with my daughter, and I have to a degree, right? But I quickly realized that if my daughter grew up and all she knew was me being like just this strict disciplinarian, then that's exactly who she would probably try to go after in life, to mirror that. And I didn't like that. I needed to be somebody that I would be happy my daughter would want to be with someday, you know what I mean? Or at least mirror those kind of personality traits. So I actually went through a whole kind of identity rehab myself and kind of looked deep down inside, and sometimes you have to go to counseling and kind of exercise some of those demons and try to figure out why you act a certain way and how can you better yourself as you move forward. And I think everybody needs to do that, kind of have to reset and take a look. And I think this is a perfect example of something that I've actually tried to do myself is, be a little bit more open and vulnerable. Because it's okay. It's okay to understand that your man has a weakness or that your daughter has a weakness. And it's okay to have a partner that is able to help them get through that. And I think that's the most important part. And this father putting on a tutu and not acting like, I'm too macho for this, is an example for his daughter to grow up and understand that, like, all because you wear a tutu doesn't define who you are.
Yeah.
It's just something that you're doing to please somebody else because you have a good heart. And that's the message, right? And so I think it's just a beautiful thing.
It is. And, my brother just welcomed his daughter in September. And I can't believe that she's almost about to be a year old.
Crazy.
And time flies. But one thing that I've noticed about my brother is he has become vulnerable. It hasn't gotten to the point, because obviously she's still an infant, to where, he's dressing up in a tutu or having tea parties with her. But you can totally tell the moment that my niece was born, there was a switch that flipped with my brother, and he became vulnerable, and his heart just became so soft. And it's so crazy to think, like, man, that was my brother. Like, this is my brother. Like, if I were to show you my brother from 4 years ago and show you the guy now, it's completely night and day. Or heck, even 2 years ago, it's night and day. Having a kid and having a daughter completely changes you. And
I'm telling you what, a man's weakness is not a woman. A man's weakness is a daughter, if he has one, because I guarantee she has him wrapped around her little finger. Because I know my daughter does me, and I couldn't be happier about it. I'll give her anything she wants 10 times over. So again, this week, major announcement. Again, we have to make sure that you know this. Please download the pod. We'll share some clips on social media. But Sarah Spain joining us in the house this week.
Yes,
ESPN
sir.
host, radio host, TV personality, and writer. She's an amazing individual. She does such great work. She has great thoughts and insight all the way across the board. She's not afraid to call people out. She's not afraid to answer the tough questions, and she's going to be here this week. We couldn't be happier. Major shout out to Mike Yam this past week for joining us as well. These people are busy, right? They're busy with their day jobs, if you will, and they come on out of the graciousness of their heart. We don't pay them. We don't ask them. We just ask for some participation, and they've obliged greatly, and we can't be more thankful for that. So thanks to both those individuals for what they have done and what they will do. And again, you can download that all over our social platforms. But Justin, go ahead and tell them where they can find us.
First of all, we can't say Sarah Spain without doing the. We had to do the hip hop horn for Sarah Spain. We did it at the beginning of the podcast. We got to do it at the end.
At least it wasn't this.
Okay.
We had to get that in there.
We had to get it. But we're gonna have Sarah Spain on the next podcast. So please download Total BS Podcast. Subscribe.
Did you forget what our podcast is called?
I almost did. I had a brain fart. I almost called it my other podcast for the Arizona Daily Star, but I had a brain fart. So make sure you subscribe to the Total BS Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and for the Sunday Night Throwdown that we always do every weekend. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a like on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. But Sarah Spain, this week, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, share with all your friends, because it's going to be an incredible podcast.
It's going to be a fun time. We can't wait to bring it to you this week. Until next time, we'll see you when you see you. Peace.
Your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just part of the program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You're not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us. Yo, your fans just might turn into our fans. Be cool, it's just a part of this program. Spit your best 16 if you must. You not whack, you just sound whack rapping after us.